All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, How to Save Your Data from Ransomware Attacks. You see here the Gartner logos on this title page as well. I just want to make a quick mention of that. The bottom left, the Gartner 2015 Cool Vendor. So Infoscale was named a Cool Vendor in Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery by Gartner in 2015. And then you see the bottom right, the Gartner Visionary in Disaster Recovery as a Service. That was this year's Magic Quadrant, so just came out several weeks ago. If you guys would like a copy of that, I'm happy to send it your way. All right, so my name is Carla Federigo, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Infoscale. Just a couple of quick housekeeping announcements, and you have all my contact info here. If you do want to reach out to me after the webinar, please do. I'd be happy to chat with you. Also, just a couple of common questions that I usually get. Is there a recording? Yes, we are recording this today, and it will be posted at infoscale.com/webinars within about 24 to 48 hours, if not later today. And then, are there a copy of the slides? So yes, there is a handout section in the software today, and you can go ahead and grab a copy of the slides there. I also put a couple of other pieces of information that I thought would be helpful and useful to you. I put a report there on ransomware. I put the, let's see, the ransomware survival guide. I put in the 2016 Disaster Recovery Attitudes and Adoption report, and then also a copy of these slides. So hopefully you guys can grab those. And then we'd also love for you to join the conversation. You can follow us on Twitter at Infoscale. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Facebook. So we'd really love to see you on social. And then if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please just use the questions tool in the software today and just type in your questions throughout the presentation. So what you should be looking at now is the strains of ransomware. So a couple of different strains that we've seen quite a bit here lately. CryptoLocker is one. So CryptoLocker, it's targeting computers running on Windows, and it restricts access to the infected computers. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these specific examples in a bit. Ransom 32 is another one. Ransom 32, it's a variety of ransomware as a service. So it effectively puts the power to create ransomware into the hands of really anyone. And so since regardless of their technical know-how, almost anyone could get this up and running, what makes it really dangerous is that it's coded entirely using JavaScript. So that means it can be used to target computers running Windows, running Mac OS X, and Linux as well. And then there are lots of other strains as well. Locky is one that I did mention earlier, and Locky is one that we've all heard of recently and actually quite often. So it renames all the important files, so they have the extension .locky. And this one we're going to look at a little bit closer because what we're seeing is that Locky is really a game changer. And first, it's because it's targeting a worldwide audience. And then after that, what we see is, so businesses and organizations through your entire network, just one main route of infection begins, and it could be an email spam campaign, it could be something disguised as an invoice. So that's one that we've seen quite a bit lately. Word documents were coming through containing malicious macros attached to those emails. And what we saw in the beginning days of ransomware, hackers were only going after consumers, their individual files and folders. But these strains of ransomware are increasingly infecting business systems. So it's really upped the ante on extorting payments. Also, targeting businesses. What we've seen businesses throughout Europe, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, they've all been hit by these massive email spam campaigns. And even closer to home, businesses are being targeted in these similar types of spam attacks. So just recently, Amazon.com was targeted by a massive phishing campaign. It was estimated to have sent out 30 to 100 million spam messages claiming to be an Amazon.com shopping order update. So that one is, of course, really another one to worry about. Now, here's where that bigger problem sets in. You know that Locky encrypts the files on that one workstation, but then it can travel across your network. It can encrypt files on your network drive. And so that's how just one Locky infected user is bringing down the whole department. Now, we definitely want to talk about what do you do if you're infected, say, tomorrow? More importantly, how do you prevent an attack from ever happening in the first place? So now that we have a really good understanding of what ransomware is and how it works, we're going to shift gears and really talk about the meat of the presentation here. You know, what can be done to prevent it? So we'll get into some of the ransomware best practices and how to work against ransomware. Of course, you know that it's important to have antivirus, but that's more of like a firewall stopping things from getting in. But if you lack sophisticated cybersecurity infrastructure for anti-malware to stop things once they're already in your system, then you're at risk. And right now, none of us are really immune to these types of high-profile attacks. Plus, everyone has irreplaceable data. So let's talk about how to effectively and affordably take the proper preventative measures. You don't want to be stuck with the only option of just paying that ransom. All right, but first I have a quick poll for you guys. So you've heard quite a bit from me. I'd love to hear from you. So I've just launched this quick poll. I'll give everyone a moment to answer. When it comes to ransomware, which of these is you? A, I've been a victim of ransomware, or one of my customers has been a victim of ransomware. B, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach. Or C, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. So I'll give everyone a moment to answer there. We have 65% of you have voted so far. All right, we still have just 65% of you have voted. If everyone would like to participate, and then I'll share the results. So far, it looks like we have 64% of you are saying, yes, I've been a victim of ransomware, or my customer has been a victim of ransomware. And then 36% are saying, no, I haven't experienced this type of breach. So I'm really curious to hear from that 64% of you that said yes. What was the situation there? And what did you do? Did you pay the ransom, or did you roll back from a backup? How much did it cost the business? How long were you down? Just curious for any additional info there. If you guys want to share in the question tool, go ahead and type those comments in there. And we still have, let's see, about 70% of you have voted. So I'll go ahead and close the poll down and share these results with you guys. So there we go. The results here, 64% are saying, yes, I've been a victim of ransomware. 36%, no, I have not experienced this. And then also use that question tool if you'd like to share some of those details. Great. Let me go ahead and close this poll down and then jump back into the presentation. All right. Okay, so could you guys confirm now we are back on the screen share? This slide is avoiding ransomware. Good, great, okay. All right, so backup and disaster recovery, it can protect you, but only if you do it right. So we have a couple of different options that we're going to talk about here, a few different things that we're going to look at. Now, first is really that if you do get infected, what do you do immediately? What's the first go-to if that's something that happens to you? So if you do get infected, the first thing you want to do is just get that infected machine off the network. So you want to stop the malware from spreading. You always do need to assume that the malware could make use of that internet connection and then it's spreading itself to others. So first, just isolate the machine, stop all network communication from spreading that malware. And then next, reset your BIOS time. So in some instances, you can reset your BIOS time to essentially stop the clock. It'll give you more time to prepare your backups, prepare the recovery, and according to Privacy PC, IT admins don't even need to be afraid of that ransomware countdown timer if you just reset your BIOS time back. So this is really going to give you more time to just calm down, recover your key files, eliminate the malware. And then third, if you're hit with malware, roll back from a previous backup. So having a recent backup is going to make it easy for you to restore operations as quickly and as painlessly as possible, saving money for yourself and for the business. And this is just one example. We are going to get to another in just a moment here. But right now, this is what most of us think is there are two options if you get infected, either pay the ransom or roll back to a previous backup. And that's because the ransomware is silently and slowly working over weeks, maybe a month. It's encrypting all the files on your computer. So that's why having that backup solution in place and also regularly testing backups to make sure they're running properly is one really critical part of protecting your business from ransom. It's not the only way, but it's definitely one way. So right now, if you don't have access to that recent backup, you may likely have no choice but to pay the ransom. And then that takes time. So consider, we just discussed some of those recent trends. It can take 2 to 5 days to get back up and running. So what would that downtime cost you? Would it be costlier than paying the ransom? And what's your cost per hour of downtime? How would that affect your business? Now, here are a couple of screenshots from my backup and recovery accounts with Infrascale. So by default, Infrascale keeps everything. That's why you can see the date my rollback date that I chose is sometime in May 2011. Now that's kind of unrealistic, but just to make the point that Infrascale keeps everything, every version ever backed up, so I can roll back to any date that I choose. And I can back up with low RPO, recovery point objective, and low RTO, which is recovery time objective, since I regularly back up my machine. So I could just recover my useful files and keep working. But we're going to talk about, so that's just the instance of one single individual, one case. So we're going to need to talk about what else can be done. Now, the Infrascale backup and recovery software that I have on my machine that's not what all of Infrascale is. It's not just this backup and recovery software. Here is a quick snapshot of my dashboard. So my dashboard is a unified management console. All of my data protection, cloud storage needs doesn't require VPN access. Here I can view activity alerts, I can access reporting, monitoring, I can manage retention settings for my data, I can control remote deployments, and I can monitor account usage for all the accounts that I have in my file. Now, when ransomware goes through your system, though, it's modifying each file that it touches. So if it's a file that we're backing up, it'll be recognized as a changed file. So here's the account level details in the dashboard. You can see analytics of the last 24 hours, last 30 days, the calendar view, so you have those radio buttons to choose from, and you can see which machine has the most changes within all of your accounts. So what we did is we took these analytics and we created a brand new monitoring alert. So this new alert is called Anomaly Detection. And if you have a large number of newly modified files, then you're going to want to know what happened, what's touching my data. The average backup of changed files will just continue as normal, but an unusually large backup is going to trigger this anomaly alert that we created. So if you're an admin and you're subscribed to monitoring alerts, you're going to receive that trigger. And then in this alert, you know, okay, here's what I should investigate. Let's see what should be happening because it may be a case of ransomware. But let's take a closer look at this anomaly detection and really see it in action. So here's a really quick, just 2-minute video here. So here's my InfoScale dashboard homepage, and going through how to set up the anomaly warning, you just go to the Settings tab and click Monitoring, and then on the monitoring page you see the Enable Anomaly Detection setting. And then here you can also set the threshold. So the warning's going to be released when that threshold's passed. So the way it works is we're calculating a rolling average number of modified files over time for each device. And then if that modified file count for a backup passes this predetermined threshold, then we release a warning. So if you see an event, of course, we recommend investigating it. And then you can open the details to see things like backup duration, total files processed, how many were modified. Here are all the monitoring details. And then you can also download the logs here by just clicking into the Manage action. Typically what we see is users back up 5 to 10 modified files per day, since so much work is done online. But anything that's maybe 3 to 4 times that is going to be cause for investigation, right? All right, so that's a quick overview of our anomaly detection action. What's really important to understand from this is that nobody has proactive alerting. None of the BDR, backup and disaster recovery solutions, out there have this. So right now, everyone's just sort of waiting to get infected and then kind of scrambling and quickly trying to pay the ransom or roll back to a previous date, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now that we've seen anomaly detection in action, I have one more quick poll for you guys. So let me go ahead and launch this next poll, simply asking, when it comes to BDR, which of these is you? A is, I can confidently roll back to a previous backup within 15 minutes. B is, I wish I had backup and disaster recovery, but just can't afford it. C, I still don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. And I think we've seen now that C is kind of the trick question, right? Since you guys are all on this webinar today, we do recognize it's a problem. We want to know what to do about it. So it is definitely a little bit of a trick question, but I want to include it in there and make sure you guys are paying attention. All right, so far we have 38% of you have voted. I'll leave this up for a minute to give everyone a chance to participate, and thank you for your participation. I appreciate it. And then I'll share the results after that. Okay, we've got 56% of you have voted. And I'd love to hear comments from you guys on your answers too, which we'll get to in the questions tool. You can put some comments in there, and we'll get to that during the Q&A. Love to hear from you guys. Okay, I'll give everyone just another moment here to participate. If you haven't voted yet, get your vote in. I'll close the poll down in just a moment. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at those results. All right, so for you guys here in the audience, when asked, when it comes to BDR, which of these is you? We have 67%. I can confidently roll back to a previous backup within 15 minutes. For that 67% of you, can I ask, when was the last time you tested that? And also, could you confidently roll back within, say, 15 seconds, out of curiosity? And then have you ever had to use it? All right, and then 22% have answered, I wish I had backup and disaster recovery, but just can't afford it. So that's something we're going to talk about as well. We do have affordable, effective solutions that you can put in place. I think that you'll see we can offer failover disaster recovery at the mere price point of backup. So we are going to talk about that. And then 11%, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. You guys, I put that in as a trick question. So I definitely want to hear from that 11% of you. Why don't you think you'll be affected by ransomware at all? What is your environment like? What do you currently have in place? So I really would love to hear from you guys too. All right, thank you everyone for participating in that. Really appreciate it. Okay, and with that, let's talk a little bit more about how to avoid ransomware. Now, we looked at backup, but we know that backup can take time. So what if backup just simply isn't enough? What if I need a better solution? What if I need something that works in seconds, not days? So here is where DRaaS comes in. DRaaS, or Disaster Recovery as a Service, lets you quickly fail over your systems. It supports DR to be on demand, like in this scenario here. So this is DR on demand, where you've got some end users in this situation just working along. Unknown to them is that they're about to experience a ransomware attack. So when that ransomware attack happens with on-demand failover, you can easily log in from any browser, even if it's a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone, and roll back to a previous date and instantly recover a clean version of the entire environment. So not just files and folders, but instantly recover the entire running environment so that everyone keeps working in just a matter of seconds. Now let's take a closer look at this, a little bit of a more detailed way to look at it. So on the left, you see cloud backup, which is really what we were talking about earlier. This is the traditional backup flow. So your typical backup and recovery has your production box and a backup server next to it. It's then copying data to some storage, which could be maybe a tape drive, on-prem disk. It could be copying to the cloud, any offsite storage, but it's just copying data over wire. And then when this disaster happens, that's the ransomware attack right there, you then need to copy that data back out of storage, and then you need to reconfigure, and all of this takes time. This is why you recover in days. But on the right, DRaaS is very different. So with disaster recovery as a service, you don't want to be copying everything back and forth and moving data multiple times. You have the production and the backup, but you simply spin up a working environment where that data is. So we virtualize and create up to 200 machines on the fly and simply reconstruct your entire data center infrastructure where your data is sitting. So this is really, really important because of how ransomware has evolved. The primary issue, it used to be data loss. It used to be my files and folders, just individual data loss. But now ransomware spreads over a network. So it really represents business interruption and downtime. And that's what Infoscale aims to solve. Our mission is really to eradicate downtime and focus on business continuity. Okay, now let's take a look too at data security and privacy, because we take security and privacy very seriously. So rather than other solutions that are just taking raw files and sending them to the cloud, Infoscale is using military-grade double-blind encryption. encryption to protect data. So this is the best practice, really, encryption locally, in transit, and at rest. It's the only way to truly ensure that data is secure, and this grade of encryption allows us to enable compliance with regulations like HIPAA, PCI, Safe Harbor, Sarbanes-Oxley, and many others. And then in addition to that, InfraScale is a completely end-to-end solution. So the double-blind encryption that I just mentioned for security, protection for all servers, workstations, endpoints, unlimited archiving with that proactive alerting that we saw earlier, the anomaly detection, automated data protection with retention policies and admin control. So you can control all those retention policies and monitoring. We have unlimited test recoveries, and then 24/7 support, 365 days per year. And then not to mention, we're already protecting thousands of businesses globally with our geographically dispersed data centers. Here on this map, each single red dot represents a business that we protect. So this is a pretty cool visual of you can see worldwide the reach that we have. So really, InfraScale gives you two great solutions for ransomware, not only the cloud backup, but also failover disaster recovery, without having to sacrifice any critical data or pay any ridiculously high ransoms or really risk any lost profits due to downtime. So since ransomware is the #1 cybersecurity threat right now, I'd love to offer everyone for joining us a 60-day free trial to get set up, test it out, and really take advantage of this offer. You can do so if you want to just use the question tool and say, yep, I'd like the 60 days free, or yep, I'm interested. Just type something into the question tool and I can then get you set up with that this week. So you can use that question tool, or you can email us at team@infrascale.com if you'd like to take advantage of that. All right, so make sure to get your questions in. So I did mention in the beginning we're coming to Q&A at the end here, and so now we're going to dive into the Q&A. But I do want to remind you guys that we have a giveaway today. So the person who asks the most relevant and on-topic questions is going to be the winner. And so I'm going to turn it over to our sales engineer, Brian Roberts, for that Q&A, and then I'll be coming back on the line here at the end of the Q&A to announce the winner. I also do have one last poll that I'm going to launch, and during the Q&A, you can go ahead and answer that last poll. Simply, would you like to learn more about ransomware or about BDR from InfraScale? Just a yes, I'd like to learn about InfraScale. Yes, I'd like some educational BDR info, or no, not yet, maybe later. So I'll leave that one up here on the screen, and then Brian, I will pass it over to you for the Q&A.
All righty, thank you, Carla. Is everyone able to hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, excellent. So we'll start off with some of the questions that we've gotten in here. One of the first questions that we got, what is the risk to a backup if it is network backup or a separate drive directly connected to your system? So as Carla kind of mentioned in the presentation, in terms of how files get affected and attacked, if your server happens to be a standalone system with no network drives attached to it, then it's just going to be the local volumes that are affected. If you do have a UNC path connected or an iSCSI path connected, then obviously that data can be affected too with certain types of ransomware. However, with our backup product, we actually keep different versions of the data stored in our repositories for the cloud backup as well as the appliance backup too. So even if your alternate versions of that data get affected, we still have the original copy of that data and any previous versions that may not have been affected, and those are easily able to be restored from. So that is some of the capabilities of our product to kind of give you countermeasures against the ransomware attacks. Hopefully that was a satisfactory answer. If you have more that you want kind of added on to that, you can always add on to the question. The next question that we had was, do you have data centers in Canada? So we actually have data centers all over the world. We have data centers in Canada, the United States, South America, Australia. Basically, every continent has multiple data centers on it. Now, those are data centers for our direct-to-cloud product. We also have failover data centers that are in Canada and the U.S. as well. That's specific to the appliance DRaaS solution versus the cloud backup solution. Another question that we had was, who has access to our data and for what purpose? We don't have any access to your data unless you specifically want us to have access to your data. We have the ability to have managed and unmanaged companies created within our dashboards. So if you don't want us to be able to have any access to your data, if you don't even want us to be able to reset your password for you, you can completely lock down the account. It can have double-blind encryption applied to it. We will only have access to your data if we are specifically given permission to have access to your data. Another question was, are there different agents for desktops and servers? So there's different aspects of the agents that can be changed for desktops and servers, but for our direct-to-cloud product, the agent is the same. It just automatically detects the operating system, detects applications that are installed, and protects it accordingly. There are different agents for, say, mobile devices like cell phones and tablets. It's an app you can download from our App Store. But for the agents that get installed on, say, laptops, desktops, that's all the same agent, even for servers as well. And the same applies for appliances as well. There's a Windows agent that gets installed on Windows desktops as well as Windows servers. Linux agents that get installed on Linux desktops as well as Linux servers as well. So the agent basically automatically detects the application and the operating system that it needs to protect and will move forward in that protection methodology. Now, one of the questions was a bit more sales oriented. I'm interested but would like to know more in line with MSP model and costs. Carl, I believe that we could probably send that to our sales team to get more information on that, couldn't we?
Yep, that sounds good. So let's see, what's the first name there on that one?
The first name on that one was Greg.
Greg. Yep. Okay, Greg H. Yep. No worries on that, Greg. I will definitely have someone reach out to you on our team.
All right. So we're just waiting for a few more questions to come in.
Any more questions, guys?
Minimum bandwidth requirements. So that really depends on change rates and things of that nature. The simple answer to that question is that we can operate over the connection that you give us. However, it is going to obviously affect maybe how frequently you can replicate or send that data off-site. We've seen people operate over connections as small as bonded T1s. We've seen people operate over dedicated 1 gig MPLS connections. So those connections really are just a kind of a side effect of basically your environment and what the change rates look like. But again, we can operate over very small connections. We can bandwidth throttle, so on and so forth. Okay, I think there was some clarification on that question. Do we seed the original load, or do we have to do it all over the internet? So we do offer seeding for both the appliance as well as for our direct-to-cloud product. Seeding can be performed so that you don't send huge amounts of data over the wide area network. Obviously, if you've got 15 terabytes of data in a 10 megabit connection, that's mathematically just going to take maybe a month or so to try and get that data from A to B. So we do certainly offer seeding. So that way you don't have to worry about flooding your bandwidth for, say, a month or so trying to get all that data and then never being able to catch up based on your change rates. So how is it handled? I actually want to defer to another individual on the call for that. I can give you the basics of it, but basically what it is there is a secondary server or a NAS involved, and we would seed the data to that and send it off to our data center. But I want to let the other individual, Seth, on the call go a little bit deeper into how that actually works.
Sure. So with the seeding, especially on the appliance, we actually capture what we call the block store, which is all the deduped bits and bytes that are managed within the appliance. We capture that entire block store and move that to the secondary, upload it, and then what we have is a proprietary block dedupe assisted replication. And what that means is we're sending only the changed blocks that exist. So we take the map of the blocks that exist for a job, send that to the secondary and say, hey, you know, out of all the blocks that exist, do any of these match? And if they do, we don't send anything at all. So we're only picking out the pieces that are missing, transferring those over the wire, and rebuilding the job on the secondary. And that becomes very, very effective when the block store already exists, because it'll match all those blocks and ship only those things that are, you know, either A, too small to replicate, or new data that's been written since the seed.
So a follow-up question to that was, so this is all done at the bit level, and just a very generic answer to that question is yes, it is done at the bit level. But again, Seth, if you want to elaborate a bit more on what level and how that's actually performed.
Sure. So it's actually done on the block level rather than the bit. So it's done on the block level, and so those blocks are compared to one another rather than individual bits. So it's a little bit larger than that. I think the blocks are 64K, and so we compare those to one another and then create those maps accordingly.
All right. Well, guys, are there more questions? I don't see a lot more questions coming through. Brian or Seth, do you guys see any more questions there that you haven't answered?
I don't.
Okay. All right then. Well, what we can do, I'm going to go back to this poll here. So we had a poll that we launched. Looks like 73% of you have voted on that poll so far. I'll give everyone just another moment to participate in that there while we go, and I'll just take a look at the questions here and then be able to announce the winner of today's giveaway. All right, so looks like Greg H. had the most comments and questions, so congrats on that, Greg. We will email you this afternoon to confirm that, so congratulations on being the winner of today's giveaway. We have Chromecast as the giveaway today, so we'll email you this afternoon. And looks like 80% of you have voted on that poll. We have 25% have answered A, 50% have answered B, and then 25% answered C. So thank you everyone for participating with that. So we'll go ahead and we'll end a few minutes early here. We'll give you about 10 minutes back in your day. Brian and Seth, thank you guys for being on the line for the Q&A and answering all those questions. And thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks.